Hello everybody, and sorry for the delay here. We're just waiting for YouTube to catch up with where Zoom is at the moment. As soon as that's all up to date, we'll be letting people in. It's the first YouTube streamed version of ZoomZoomers. So thank you for joining us tonight. We're just going to pop over to Zoom right now and let everybody in. Let's see who we've got tonight. We see that we have plenty of people in the waiting room ready to come on. I'm just going to admit them all, and let's see who joins first of all. And we've got Craig, we have Ian, we have loads and loads of people here. It's fantastic to see you all. How are we all doing? All right?
All right.
All right.
Greetings.
Greetings,
Evening,
everybody.
Hello.
Hello, everybody. I think we've still got a few more people who are currently joining, so I'll just wait for everyone to pop in. Hello, Naomi. Hello, Tom.
There we go.
Okay, while we wait for more people to come along, why don't we just introduce ourselves? Who's here so far? So, Ian, you look a bit different this week. You'll just tell us your name and what your handle is, please.
Yeah, got the setting wrong on the beard trimmer. So I'm meant to go for a shave, just take a bit off, and that wasn't it.
Everything off. I saw some really cool. I saw some very unusual hair that you did for your birthday as well, where you had kind of some spikes going on. But I guess have you actually cut your hair as well, or is it just your?
No, it's still a floppy, horrible mess. So which is. I'm trying to. I can deal with that. The problem with the beard is I was just getting food in it and stuff. So I was just like, when you can't feel what food you've got like hanging off your mouth, you kind of go, that's just the beard's too long.
Yeah, that's how you know. It's just if you've got like 3 courses stuffed in there, then you kind of go, this is a bit too much. Yeah,
it's handy if you want a snack, but you know,
yeah, it's that whole question about if you can't feed a gremlin after midnight, what happens if you get something stuck in his beard or something along those lines?
Jonty's holding up an Avon tire, and no one's mentioning this.
we felt it was best.
Is it? I thought it was some kind of weird frame. I came in, I was like, what is this?
What is it? Yeah. We'll get on to that in just a moment, Jonty, because I think there's a bit of a story behind that tyre, isn't there? But Charlie Martin looks quite different. I don't know if you guys can see what I can see with Charlie, but I'm guessing she's gone to get some snacks.
Sorry for being a bit late, by the way. I just quickly had to do a run.
A run, as in go for a jog?
No, I actually just went to the loo. I just suddenly saw the time and I was like, I won't be able to hold it for the hour.
All right. Fair enough. No worries.
Are we not allowed to take pee breaks? Is that official now?
That's official. That's it. Once you're in, you're in.
Yeah. Prison rules.
Just got to suck it up and hold it.
Call that going for a yellow flag.
I
want to suck it up.
Oh, sorry.
Lewis, could you let us know who you are and what your Twitter name is, please?
Evening all. My name is Lewis Kingston, freelance motoring journalist, and you can find me on Twitter at These Old Cars.
Lovely, thanks. Lewis, I've got Neil next. It looks like he's in bed.
This is actually my bed, yeah, believe it or not. Hi, I'm Neil Briscoe. I am at Neil M. Briscoe on Twitter. That's Briscoe with an E. And I am also a freelance motoring journalist whose wife has cut his hair this week. And I think she has actually done quite a decent job.
Yeah. Luckily, I live with a hairstylist. So I'm kind of, she's not had a go at it for a while. She can't do anything about the greys, but there's only so much that any human can do.
You've
Richard,
just got to live with the grey.
Yeah, we embrace it, right? Surely we look better when we get grayer. I think that's what she keeps telling me anyway. So, Richard.
Hello, I'm Richard Gooding. I'm a freelance motoring writer and graphic designer, and I'm at richgooding.com on Twitter.
Fantastic. And Ben?
Hi, Ben Hodges. Twitter is at Ben SV Hodges, and I am somehow deputy editor for Car Buyer.
Alan next with all the equipment that makes us all very jealous.
I'm Alan Bradley. I'm presenter of the Motoring Podcast, and on Twitter I'm at AJP Bradley. And I've got to I contractually obliged to spell it out that it's Bradley.
Okay, so that caused some confusion in the past. Is there another famous Alan Bradley or?
But other than the Coronation Street and Tron, no, it's just its habit over the last 300 and something podcasts. I, for some reason, always spell it out so people know there's an E at the end. before the Y at the end. And I missed it out the other week, and loads of people said, "But why did you not do it normally?"
Right. Okay. So people got used to it. There is a more famous Damien Cross with an E at the end of his name, but I would advise, if you're ever going to Google Damien Cross with an E, do it when there's no children around. He's an interesting chap. Craig.
Hello. I'm Craig Woollard. I'm at Craig_Woollard on Twitter, and I am a historian and a freelance journalist.
Lovely, thank you, Craig. And now we've got two in the next screen on my screen here. We've got Naomi and Tom.
I'm Tom Spencer. I'm TP Spencer 88 on Twitter.
And I'm Naomi Panter at Naomi Panter on Twitter.
Thanks, guys. Now, Jonty, who held up a tyre earlier, we'll get onto that in a bit. So people who are intrigued will find out about. So could you tell us a bit about yourself?
Yeah, I'm Jonty at Jonty's Corner on Twitter, and I get involved with a lot of YouTube channels about motorsport and F1 and expand the sport and get a load of new fans in.
Lovely, thanks. And I think that tyre that you brought up earlier has got something to do with F1, isn't it? So we'll come back to that in a bit. Now I've got the next guy listed as Wibble.
Yeah, I still haven't worked out how to change. I keep forgetting that, but my name is Christopher Sharp, at Christopher PBS on Twitter, and I'm a journalist and LGBT activist.
Thank you, Chris. And Jess.
Hi, I'm Jess Shanahan, and I'm at JetLabomb on Twitter. I'm a motoring writer, and I'm also known as the racing mentor.
Jet LaBomb. I've always thought of it as Jet L Bomb, and I've always wondered what Jet L Bomb is.
Oh, there's a story there that I will maybe tell you one day.
Okay.
Yeah, I always figure it's in my head as Jet LaBomb.
Right.
But normally when I read it out, I say Jet L Bomb, so people know how to spell it. But I didn't today, so there you go.
Thank you very much. Charlie, you mid mouthful there.
I'm eating dinner. Is that all right?
Yeah, of course it is.
Just struggling to keep up. Hi, I'm Charlie Martin. I'm at GoCharlieM on Twitter and Instagram, and I'm a racing driver and an LGBT activist, and and a kind of vlogger and a bit of Jane of all trades, really. So
yeah. We'll chat a bit more about your race driving, because you've been doing a bit with Formula E a few days ago, which was just really entertaining. So we'll get onto that in a bit. I'm just looking around. I think with kind of everyone that's in the screen now has been introduced, haven't they? Is anyone else that I've missed out? Like I missed out Toby Trice last week when I was asking everyone for what make of car they would love to drive for the rest of their life, and he was patiently waiting to have his turn. And then we got on a bit of a tangent about putting a rocket on a Vauxhall Chevette and making it go 300 miles an hour. So he never got his chance to answer. But I think I've covered everyone for introductions there, haven't I? There's no one that I've got waiting in the waiting room. So we had a question this week again, which I'll come to in a bit. And I'll wait until we're part of the way through, because we've actually got a guest coming on during the podcast, and we'll see what he has to say about it as well. So the question that we'll ask you in a bit is about the best era of car design. But before we do that, then now let's cover off this this tire.
This one.
Yeah.
You just ask people to bring some other things along that they have, and it's not little.
Wow. Not little, no.
Oh, my camera appears to be reversed, so it's a Nova tyre. No, it's not much of a story. It's just an example of the things you can pick up if you keep your eyes peeled. There's a tiny little shop in Stafford called the Quirky Emporium, and he does reclaimed and repurposed all sorts of things, but he does have a deep love of motorsport, and that actually came from, is it the FIA Masters? The historic series? But he didn't know where from. So we had a bit of a game trying to trace it back, and we think, going by photos and the size of it and everything, it came from the 1974 March 741 by Hans Stuck. So it's actually, it was, find out where it came from. Yeah, it's real use.
It's a real thing. Yeah.
Yeah, but it wasn't used back then. It was used in the last few years for the historic series. But it's still got all it's sort of, you've got the wear on the surface of it and the marbles and things. And you can find this stuff in the strangest of places. I mean, a tiny little back alley in the middle of Stafford, you wouldn't have thought.
And what do you actually do with it then? Is it just kind of in the house somewhere, just looking at you, saying, "Well, what are you going to do now?"
Yeah, well, eventually I will be setting up all the wall behind for all my other various bits of memorabilia, so it'll go up there.
Oh, I see.
But a bit of wood that goes in it, so it actually works as a shelf.
It works as a shelf.
I mean, ask yourself, would you have that in your house?
Yeah, I'll find somewhere.
The resounding answer is always yes.
Yeah.
I actually asked people whether I should get it or not, and people were saying, "Why are you asking?" The fun was just finding out where it was from.
I bet. Yeah. So you're not been attempted to find the rest of the march and put it all together as one big car then?
It's all still together. It's still getting used and raced, but I think that's a bit beyond my price range, unfortunately.
Fair enough. Now, one thing that has also been brought along is just a story, Alan, rather than an actual physical object, because you kind of dropped this on our laps during the week, that there's something that happened at a Formula E race.
Well, I sort of, yeah, I'm really conscious this is probably going to be a bit rubbish, but never mind. So last week I held this little chap up very briefly, and he is one of the things you got if you were in the Emotion Club in at the first London E-Prix in 2015. And one of the things about Formula E then, so I ended up in the Emotion Club because I am friends with someone who, a chap called Graham Davison, who was involved with Qualcomm and Formula E right back at the very start. And he explained to me, before Formula E was even a thing, we were standing in there in his kitchen, and he was telling me all about this thing he was involved in, this new race series and stuff. And I thought it sounded really cool and was really interested and all these kind of things. And I worked with his wife for about a decade now, I guess, on and off. And I bought my tickets and stuff, but then Qualcomm had they had a couple of spare passes for the Emotion Club. So I inherited one. And what was cool then was that it was far less like F1. It was far more like club racing, and everybody kind of chipped in a bit.
Yeah.
And everybody did a little bit of everything. And it wasn't as segregated as you maybe see at big race series, or even that it was by the next year, in that everyone used the Emotion Club. So all the teams and all the team principals would get their coffee from there and stuff. There was no separate. There were different kind of grades, you know, of eating and stuff, and there was a media center and things. But this was before the podcast and all that kind of stuff. So I inherited one of these lovely gold passes. Okay. And I was there nice and early so that I could meet up with Graham, because he had meetings and stuff, and Sue, and I to pick that up. And then I went in to get a coffee, and went up, and super renewable coffee and all the other great Formula E stuff. And the guy said, "What would you like?" And it's like, "I'll have an espresso, please." So he starts pouring my coffee, and I'm standing off to the side because, you know, that's what you do when people are making you a coffee. And in walks Alain Prost. I'm doing this. He's really down here. Tiny, absolute. He's like 2/3 of a person. And he walked up, and the barista goes, "An espresso, Mr. Prost." He goes, "Oh, and he finishes off this cup, the first espresso, puts it down. Alain Prost reaches for it, and I'm not fussed. This is Alain Prost. He can do what he wants. I don't care. You know, have my coffee. And the guy goes, no, that's this gentleman's. So I'm afraid, and then pushed it towards me, and Alain Prost apologized. I'm like, sort of thing, and then went on to me. Then the chat went on to make Alain Prost espresso. So sadly, the story is Alain Prost tried to steal my coffee, and not Alain Prost stole my coffee. Yeah.
So how surreal was that then, just to kind of bump into Alain Prost, just kind of what it seems like just a little behind the scenes paddock sort of situation? It's a bit strange.
Yeah, it was quite weird.
Yeah, I bet
it was quite strange. I'd seen him I'd seen him before at the first testing up at Donington, and stuff. The first public test, I'd seen him then. But yeah, it's Sir Alan Prost trying to do coffee. Is, I can't imagine what an espresso would do to someone that size, though.
It's like giving it to a small French Oompa Loompa.
Pretty like hot pint in here.
Now, one more thing that was brought along, I believe, Chris, if you brought your hat along.
I have indeed.
Go on
I
then, let's
rescued
have
it
your
from
hat.
Here's my Braun hat, 2009. It was purchased at the British Grand Prix. They'd run out of Jensen hats, so got a Barrichello one. You know, it's not really been washed, I don't think, since 2009, so I might wash my hands after this. But yeah, I then took that hat to the 2013 Italian Grand Prix, which me and my dad and my brother attended. And basically, I then got stopped. This person then came running up to me and sort of patted me on the shoulder and went, "Can I take your photo?" And I was like, "What random person with a camera?" I was like, "Who the hell are you?" And they said, "No, it's your hat I want." I was like, "Oh, fine." And basically, they were doing a challenge with their friends, which was called Spot the Brawn. So they were looking for anyone with like Brawn kits, and so their challenge was to try and get as many photos of people with Brawn kit on as possible, because for some reason they wanted to do that. And I was like, well, fine. I mean, it's a strange request, but never mind. Here's, you know. And he was like, no, keep it on. It's fine. It will look weird if I just take a photo of the cap. So yeah, sort of the weird moment with me and my brother and my dad posed for a photo for me just wearing this Brawn hat for this person who had this weird photo challenge.
Yeah. Oh, well, there you
Yeah,
go. So it's amazing what people get up to at a Grand Prix when you think they're here to watch the cars, and yeah, all sorts of things go on. I was at a race once where one guy was just he fell asleep for the race and he didn't actually watch it all. LA, now you've just you've arrived. Do you want to just let people know your name and your Twitter handle, please?
Yeah, well, it's LA and my handle is @1_LA on Twitter. It's really easy, and I'm representing Inside F2, which is like a platform, you know, for Formula 2. Sorry, I'm late. I was trying to get in.
Hang on, I've just got a bit of feedback here. LA, have you got a drink with you today?
I have no idea what you're talking about. It's a little one.
Very nice.
Well
played.
That would suit Alan Prost.
That would be a swimming pool for Alan Prost.
Yeah, cheers.
That's
everyone.
Alan Prost night out. That's his Friday night.
Cheers, LA. Now,
Yeah.
Charlie, not sure if you're still eating it right now, but
I'm nearly finished.
You're nearly finished. Do you think you're in a
So
position
hungry.
to let us know about how this Formula E race went? When you kind of, what I can make out, you shepherded a damaged car around far longer than anyone should have been able to do.
Yeah, they build those Formula E cars like tanks. I mean, literally, I was really struggling coming into this weekend or last weekend because just trying to find time against the really quick guys. And for anyone who didn't see the race, there was a really, really evil chicane, which was the first corner. And like everybody else, I clipped it. I think I clipped it on lap 2 or 3. And I just thought, oh, yeah, that's it, like race over. I mean, I hit it that hard. I thought I probably lost a wheel or something at the very least. But the car just carried on going, albeit with some interesting handling characteristics. It was really good when you turned left, basically. it had turn into the power of 10. So I was trying to keep it from spinning. But it was so funny because they eliminate the driver in last, and I think I was in 18th when I had the crash. And then I was in 20th, and as I was coming up to the chicane, the guy was like, "Charlie, you're eliminated." At that moment, the guy in front just had a massive like impact, like literally was like an explosion. I drove past him, I think while he was in the air, and it went from 20th to 19th. And then I just heard him go, "No, actually scratch that, carry on driving." And then every lap, somebody just got eliminated, or somebody crashed, or somebody stacked and just left the race. So I actually finished in 15th.
But I was driving around on my own. I was a bit like, what am I doing? But it was kind of...
It was really entertaining because at the start you were racing with, I think, Simona de Silvestro, and then suddenly you kind of lost when you had, obviously you clipped the barrier, you dropped like 4 or 5 places, and it's like, oh, Charlie's out. But then you kind of hobbled along, and you could see that your lap times had dropped by a couple of seconds a lap. So you know, there was one point where I think you were 30 seconds behind the next person, but because people just kept flying through the air, you still managed to carry on till quite near the end, because although they get rid of people, they let the final 12 continue right to the end, don't they? And you almost got there even though your car was in bits.
Yeah, well, to be honest, I was a bit nervous because I could see that, you know, the grid was basically going to catch me up. And I thought, actually, I feel quite bad if like everybody, all the quick guys are suddenly, you know, trying to deal with me as like a moving chicane, trying to keep my wayward car pointing in the right direction. But that didn't happen. So yeah, I mean, I had like a few objectives this weekend. One was finish higher than the previous round, and one was also to try and be as quick as Simona de Silvestro. So I was about on the pace there, and so yeah, I mean, it was a really good weekend. I was moaning a lot. I think, Naomi, I owe you a box of chocolates and some drinks, because I've been having quite a lot of diva moments this last week. Just like, how can they be this quick? How can you be 4 seconds quicker? I'm sure they're all using different setups. It's a conspiracy. I'm not happy about it.
eBay at one stage.
Sorry?
Your simulator very nearly eBay at one stage.
I did, yeah. I was just like, I'm just getting rid of this. I hate this competition.
But there's another race next week, is that right?
Yeah, we've got Monaco this weekend, and apparently it's going to be a wet race. So I'm really excited about that, because basically part of my whole strategy in this competition is just seizing opportunities. And I think, you know, the chicane of death was last weekend, and this weekend it's just going to be like, I don't know, people sliding off into the harbour or something in the rain.
Yeah, yeah. Well, the
like
track that they... Sorry, what was that? Sorry?
You got to think like Panis. All you got to do is make sure you don't hit anything, and you're in with a shout.
Yeah, exactly.
Just don't do a Peter Collins. Don't go into the sea.
The big innovation coming this weekend as well. I don't know if you all saw what Dario was saying, which is like, for the first time ever, we can see drivers' facial expressions because they're not wearing helmets. So you could see was coming into the corner and like grimacing when he was coming in and like slightly wincing. And for this weekend, the innovation is a Naomi cam, where when Charlie's racing, you can see Naomi pulling her faces as well. We can live stream that for you.
Like I used to when I was a kid, I am in front of the TV. No one else can watch anything. It's just me, and the TV's like there.
So Charlie, this track that you raced on last time was just a made-up track, wasn't it? It's not a real one. So is it easier if you go to somewhere like Monaco, where you sort of know your way around it a bit?
Yeah, it is a bit, really. I mean, the track we raced on at the weekend was this kind of made up, it was like an American sort of IndyCar, like street circuit, so quite open and wide and bumpy. So yeah, I mean, the good thing about Monaco as well is, although it's the E-Prix track, so it's not the full F1 track, but we actually had the first race, which was the test round on that track, albeit in the dry. So it's like, I kind of know it already, which is cool. So I don't have to do quite, I mean, you know, I'm doing like 2 or 3 hours practice a day. So, you know, for all the other tracks, it's taken up a huge chunk of my time, you know, which is why I find myself eating dinner on Zoom calls in front of all of you guys. So yeah, it's nice this week to think, well, actually, yeah, I know the track, I know the sort of breaking points and stuff. But I mean, you know, I'm just learning so much all the time, because there's so many nuances and techniques and all these things in sim racing that are just different to racing in the physical world. So you know, I'm making steps forwards all the time to try and find things out. And yeah,
it's something we're hearing from a lot of drivers. You weren't here on the last week's call, but I'd been writing an article about esports and hearing from different sides of the story from people like Cami Sturch and the professionals like Alex Brundle and Jason Plato, and they were saying that it's a massive challenge, but it's completely different sort of thing that they have to relearn, and they're all really, really enjoying it because it is fun, unless you're, you know, Simon Pagino. But I think everyone's kind of enjoying their time on Sims at the moment. And Craig, you've been doing a bit of sim racing recently. I mean, you've been doing it for years, haven't you? But you're kind of keeping your toe in there a little bit, aren't you, as well?
Yeah, well, I mean, the whole lockdown thing has put my sim racing sabbatical on hold, if you will. So I've basically gotten back into it pretty quickly. I was hopeless before, and I continue to be hopeless. But I recently joined a league where they have their own sort of single-seater ladder, starting from the bottom all the way up to the top class, the Super Cup as they call it, GPVWC, and they've been active for 20 years now. So they've been going a long time. And when I took part in their lowest level category, the fifth division, if you want to call it, on Tuesday, I think it was, I was up against none other than Formula E commentator Jack Nichols, as well as Scott Mitchell, who's a Formula One journalist, and a few other personnel from within Formula One. So we had a grid of 40 cars, 40, around this little track in Poland called Poznan.
I know the Poznan. Sorry.
Not that Poznan.
Here. I'm going
not that Poznan, but
darn it.
So we were doing like Formula 3 cars, and they were lapping it in like 1 minute 12. So you get an idea of how small it is. So 40 cars on a track that size, it just calls for absolute mayhem, and it was chaotic.
Yeah, well, that's what you want, isn't it? You want there to be a bit of action. You don't want to be just people plodding around in circles. But
totally.
Well, actually, while we're talking about motorsport, Formula One, that kind of thing. Now, Neil, during the week, you suggested that your 9-year-old son may have been like keen to dig out a few questions for us all, like a bit of a quiz, and you've got it there with you, have you? How many questions have you got for a start?
He was going to do 10, but he, being him, got a little bit distracted, and he's only done 5. So
right. Okay.
I don't know. He and I have been doing the Autosport pub quiz, although we've been doing it on a Saturday morning rather than staying up on a Friday evening to do it. And actually, we outscored the Autosport people on the last one, which I was quite chuffed with. So I actually should have. He's been doing these. He's not to be banging on about my kids, but he is a bit of an artist. He's been doing these brilliant little F1 cartoons recently, where he's been just taking drivers' names and twisting them. So, like, he's created characters like Jensen Buttocks and Giancarlo Discicella doing the washing up, etc. But I might show those to you next week.
Yeah, I saw one with Alan Post, who was delivering a letter to Ayrton Senna or something like that. Yeah. So these questions, then, how's this gonna work?
I guess I can ask them, and people can be honest about how well they've done. Maybe jot down your answers if you like, or we can come back to this later if people need to go and grab a pen and paper.
Oh no, help!
I haven't got a pen and paper.
So is it contemporary F1 or historic?
Bit of both, actually.
Okay.
Are they absolutely wicked questions that are just completely impossible, or have we got a chance?
I've asked him not to make them too hard or too obscure, but you have to understand that when Ray gets into stuff, he gets into it deeply, and then his definition of what might be hard and geeky and Norky might be very, very different to other people's. But we can give him a try if you like.
We'll give him a try. So we've got 5 questions.
5 questions.
So I suppose even if we haven't got a pen and paper, it's probably easy to remember what you would have said the answer was.
Probably. So I guess
here, mate.
I'm doomed.
I can count to 0 very easily.
Okay,
let's have them.
All right, let's in my best quizmaster's voice. After winning the 2004 World Championship, how many races did Michael Schumacher win in 2005?
Oh man,
well, what?
No one knows that.
Was it to the nearest 10?
If you like. Okay, question 2.
Oh God.
When, and indeed where, was Sterling Moss's first ever F1 win?
Blimey.
There you go. You see, this is the thing. He hasn't looked this up in a book. I mean, he has done previously, but like he hasn't sat down tonight. He's just done these out of his head. This is what I'm trying to homeschool this person.
When's the problem?
Well, you get 1 point for that, then I guess.
Okay,
right. Question 3. How old was Max Verstappen when he won his first race?
Oh.
Do we need the months as well?
No. Well, he hasn't given the months as an answer, so I won't be looking for that.
I'm just enjoying Rich's reaction to all of these because they're pretty much the same as mine.
I know very little about F1.
Max is Yoss's son.
Okay. Yes.
He's Yoss the boss, more of a boss than Yoss.
Question 4. In what year did Damon Hill win his first F1 race? And finally, question 5. At what track did James Hunt win his first Grand Prix?
Wow.
There we go. So if people want to tell me when they're ready for the answers, I can give them.
I'm never going to be ready for those answers.
You're never going to be ready for
What was the last question? Hunt. What?
Yeah, where did James Hunt win his first race?
Oh.
Or take his first race win, I should say, to be more accurate. But anyway.
Is it we making sure it's a championship Grand Prix and not a non-championship?
Oh.
Yes, that is a critical aspect of this question, in fairness. Okay, the answer to question 1 is 1. Michael Schumacher apparently won 1 race in 2005. I haven't checked these answers, by the way. I'm just going by one race. It's just so.
That's official now.
I mean,
update the Wikipedia.
Well, I think it was the 2005 US Grand Prix.
Yeah, 6-car race, that one.
Did anyone get that right?
No, I put 6.
I did.
What's really nice, I put 1 as my first answer. I was like, no, it's Schumacher. He's got a 1 more. And I was like,
nope. It was just the one in the race where all the Michelin tire cars pulled out.
Everybody pulled off, yeah.
Yeah.
Can I just remind you, you are all playing against the 9-year-old.
race until Australia this year.
Where and when was Sterling Moss's first F1 win? The answer is British Grand Prix 1955, which was at Aintree. Give yourself a bonus point if you knew that.
I think Tom knew it.
I didn't know that.
I needed this. I needed it.
Again, changed my answer at the last moment.
Max Verstappen was 18 when he won his first race.
Got a point.
Yeah. Very good, Charlie. Nice one.
F1 knowledge.
Damon Hill won his first F1 race in 1993.
Oh, damn it. I had 92. Spanish Grand Prix.
92, he was at Brabham.
Oh.
Blind guess. Yes.
Darn it. Listen to the question.
And the last question, question 5. James Hunt won his first F1 World Championship Grand Prix at Zandvoort.
Oh, damn, got that wrong. So Dutch Grand Prix 75.
Yeah. There you go, that'll do.
Oh, okay.
That'll do.
Done. So who got 5 out of 5 then? Craig, the motorsport historian.
Yeah. If I got anything wrong, then I should really feel ashamed, really.
Yeah. Slightly.
Okay, and who got 4?
I got 4.5.
4.5. LA got 4. Jonty, you didn't get 4.
No, that's wrong.
No.
Oh.
I'm quite ashamed of myself.
I just got the Hill one wrong. Wasn't listening.
No, I got 3.5. Sorry.
3.5. So who got 3?
That's not an excuse, LA.
Jess got 3. Who got 3? This was a hard quiz. Come on. What's your son's name?
Yeah. Ray.
Yeah. What's your son called?
Ray Briscoe.
Ray Briscoe. We're gonna have a chat. Who got 2? Wow. And who got 1? And who just turned up?
All my cognitive powers diverted into digestion.
I was like 1 year out on 2 of them. On my guesses.
Feel your pain.
On my guess.
I like the fact there's a distinct split between motoring journalists and motorsports journalists in terms of results.
Yes.
Well done, Ray. Thank you.
Well, we do have a guest ready to come in now that quiz is out of the way. So I'm just going to let in Alex. So give him a nice warm welcome. And when he comes in, we'll just ask him for his name and his Twitter handle. Alex, can you tell us your name and your Twitter handle, please?
I don't think you can hear us yet.
He can't hear us yet. No, we can see him. We're waving at him. But... Connected to audio.
Smile and wave.
Hello, Alex. Are you there?
Evening, everybody. Hope you're all keeping well. Good to see some familiar faces in this meeting. My name's Alex Goldschmidt. I'm a motorsport commentator, journalist, social media content creator, and I do work in the automotive industry as a side hustle. As my motorsport is the sort of like the not the real job, really.
So, Alex, we'll start with you. This is your first time, obviously, being on a ZoomZoomers call, but I'm going to throw you completely in the deep end with the question of the week that everyone's had this week is about car design and what the best era of car design is. So what would you say is the best era of car design?
For me personally, the 1980s. It's the it's the decade that I grew up in, and BMW was a big mark back in the day. So things like the 528, 28i SE with the Toblerone sort of plastic rear spoiler, which they said, yes, helps aerodynamic efficiency. And we just said, no, it just looks good with the BBS alloy wheels. Come on. My dad actually owned an M635 CSI, not the one that like Nelson Piquet had bought out to an extra couple of hundred cc's capacity. Cars like the Countach, the Testarossa. For me, it's the 80s.
80s, yeah. It's a strong era of car design. So as a child of the 80s, it was a bit of a strange era where they suddenly quite quickly became the bangers of the industry. Yeah, but there's a lot of love now for the 80s cars. There's a lot of young people now that I work with, and to cut, graphic designers, these kind of things. They actually really love the 80s. That that aggressive styling and the square edges and all that kind of stuff. So it's when you get a really neat one from the 80s as well, that's really kind of tastefully modified. They look incredible, don't they? And like you say, the icons like the Countach, and when you see that with like neon lights and all that stuff looks fantastic. Ian, what about you? What would you say is the best era of car design? You know your way around a car body.
I do. You're right there. I've drawn a few this week. I've been doing minutes. That's that one. That's a nice one. That's one today. I think the thing is we can't. Yeah, I think we kind of fondly look back on eras, don't we? And we go, "Oh, that's a good era." But yeah, great 80s child. So yeah, I think F40s and stuff are ace things to look at. But I think at the same time, some designs are almost timeless in how they go. But what we do recently, like the Tamiya stuff and whatnot. So be doing a lot of Defenders and Land Rovers and whatnot. So yeah, I don't know. It's kind of hard to go right. What is the best era? I just like really good car design. I just like the kind of the iconic stuff, which is just instantly just recognizable. I really enjoy.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. So it's a bit of if you could like perhaps combine all the best elements of all the different eras and have, if you had a dream garage, you'd probably be picking ones from all different kinds of eras, wouldn't you? So I guess that there's no real standout for you as someone who knows car design really well. So did you as part of your art course do anything about cars in particular, or
well, so my uncle, he was a car designer, so he designed so he was involved in Maestro, Montego, Rover 200, Rover 25, Rover for him, like a very age, I remember the wheels that the car was on, and he had to give that car back, and he was gutted because it was a car he designed, and the wheels were one off, like they were just for him. So yeah, I think growing up with Uncle in the industry, I was doing this with Mini earlier. I remember sitting in a pre-production Mini on the test track at was then Rover, and sitting in the car with the kind of the iconic mid dial, and being like, wow, this is revolutionary. For that, that was what 97, I think, maybe. It's just before Rover then bought by BMW, and it all kind of separated. But yeah, no, I think I'm very lucky to be able to be in industry and do my take on car, and I'm creating stuff that I want to do anyway. Like I have a passion for it, and I'm interested in creating it, and doing the kind of the moment and you on it. So I'm just putting my little flick on how it looks. But like going to F1 and stuff, I think there's been some cracking F1 designs, and you look back at the kind of the wings and some of the aero stuff that's been on the cars over the years. You go like there's a Ferrari called the Spazinerve or something. It's called the Snowplow, and they had like a ridiculous thing on the front of it. So, but I'm very lucky to be able to draw and create stuff that I want to do anyway. So.
Yeah. Okay, Ben. For you then, what's the best era of car design?
So for me, just 1980s.
80s again.
Say, growing up, you kind of had hot hatches exploding everywhere. Well, literally, mainly when they were catching fire. Stuff like the BMWs, the E32, E34, all very flat fronted, quite angular looking. Great to look at, terrible for pedestrian. But yeah, just a really kind of nice era of car design. It still looks good today and just stands out before crash regs started to really dominate the way that cars are designed. So,
yeah, everything's kind of ended up looking quite similar nowadays. There's a bit less flair involved in it all, so it's kind of become a bit samey, hasn't it?
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, Jonty, what was it for you?
Well, I am also a child of the 80s, and I should say that, but I can't look past the 60s.
Yeah.
I have to say 60s, not just for the elegance and aesthetics of design. You've got the beautiful things, the E-Type, the Dino, which is still the best looking Ferrari ever made. But you've also got all the innovations in, your general use road cars. So many different ideas came through at that time. Not all of them were good, let's be honest, but it kind of kick-started everything.
Yeah.
Particularly with, I know technically the Mini was 50s, but give or take a few months, it's 60s. And it's
so a bit of an
60s
icon. Yeah, exactly.
And that
an icon
changed the way we do motoring forever.
Yeah. And LA, for you, what was the best era for car design, do you think?
I kind of, I'm a 70s child, but obviously I was young in the 80s, so I quite like the 80s, even though quite a lot of them were death traps because they were so boxy that obviously if they hit anyone, you just go straight under it. And we all know today that cars are designed so they'll actually flip people. So for safety, obviously not. But my dad had a Granada Chasseur, and I think it's just sort of cusping 1980 when he got it, and it was an amazing car. It's a Ford, obviously, but it was huge and long and very luxurious for I guess any kind of, like, a lot of cars like that around. And my dad was always the kind of guy that he's like a tradesman, so any vehicle he had was just full of tools and pipes and gas cylinders, and you'd often be in the back of this car, obviously days before seatbelts as well. There were seatbelts in there, but you couldn't wear it because the seats were down, so you'd be constantly rolling around the back of this car, and you literally drove like Starsky and Hutch as well. So we'd be flying, me and my sister would just be flying around the back of this vehicle. So not just for memories of the 80s, but there's a lot of good there was a lot of sort of decent cars around them days. I think this was a kind of like the Capri kind of 80s that, these days, not so sure. And the Quattro, the Audi Quattro, when that came out, that was obviously a bit of excitement, wasn't it? But just like quickly, I don't want to drone on all night and bore you all, but I love the 80s Formula One cars as well. I just love the way they looked. Even today, I'm kind of looking at one now on my iPad, and here we go again, there's the Auto Trader again, and it's just a beautiful looking car. I mean, it's just so curved, and we all like curves, don't we? And I don't know. I just love it. I just
Yeah.
love those Formula One cars from the 80s. The ones, they were all very similar looking, even the Ferraris, beautiful, very sleek, very smooth. So I'm an 80s person for cars, I guess.
Yeah, the 80s is getting quite a lot of love here. I mean, Chris, I mean, you probably just missed the 80s by a fair amount. But what is the
Yeah,
best
so
one for you?
I'm a child of 1996. So yeah, I think I'm a bit like Ian. It's sort of different bits from different eras appeal to me. In that sense, so I am a big fan of the 80s. I absolutely adore the rally cars of the 80s, the 037 S4 Delta, that the 205 T16. Those, it's the edginess of those. There's something about those cars which is so raw, and even the road homologations look amazing. It's just a shame that 205s are so unaffordable for a man who is between degrees at the moment. But at the same time, I also love the F1 cars of that era. But it's not just the 80s, because my brother was a 03 TT, and there is something about Audis of the early noughties where they just look really good.
Yeah, fair enough.
So
Yeah.
I'm sorry. I mean, again, the 80s gets more love, but it's sort of 80s and early noughties.
Okay, Alan, are you going to buck the trend, or are you going 80s as well? Yeah,
I am.
okay.
I'm a 90. 80s is good. I grew up in the back of E30 3 Series, but for me, it's 90s Japanese cars. I'll be specific enough to say Japanese cars. The stuff out of the Nissan's Pipe Factory. All these kind of things. I mean, I even owned an Isuzu V-Cross, which is like one of the ultimate sort of 90s concept cars turned production car. Fabulous stuff, and just so completely bat poo. Really, really just nuts, and just so far ahead in many ways of what was to come. So I absolutely love those 1990s ones.
Okay, and sports cars like the RX-7 and that kind of thing, and the Supras.
That's exactly what's in my head. Yeah.
They've managed to better that RX-7, really, have they? It's kind of just what you'd want a coupe of that kind of cost and kind of performance. You'd want it to look like that.
You said that, because I said something about RX-7s during the week, and then someone said, no, it's even better with a veil side kit on it. If you're thank you. That's exactly the right response. It's such a pure shape. It's so brilliant. Yeah. I just love it. I've never driven one. I have owned an RX-8, but I've never driven an RX-7.
And I think you championed Mazda as your brand of choice last week.
I did. I'd forgotten about that, actually. That wasn't a factor in choosing that this week. But I just, you see, yeah.
Well, no, you said 90s Japanese. I think I chucked the Mazda at you, and then you were kind of, okay, I'm glad someone said it. So you can't blame you for being the Mazda man again. Jess, what about you? What's the best era for you?
So I was kind of torn. I was going to say 70s just for the early Datsun Z cars, the first couple of generations of those. But actually, when I really thought about it, I have to go 80s as well. And I desperately want to be different, as is always. But no, I'm with everyone else. Quattro, 205 GTI, all kinds of cars like that. Just, I like that boxy, angular kind of style that was of that time.
Cool. And then Charlie, you mean, again, another one who really knows cars, and you've built all sorts of things yourself, and engineered your own cars, and you built your own race truck, basically, didn't you, at one point? So you know design, and you know the engineering and the nuts and bolts of cars. But have you got a favorite era of car design as well?
Yeah, I'm like a female version of MacGyver, I guess. I don't know. I'm listening to everything that's just been said. I kind of was getting swung towards the 80s because, again, having grown up in the 80s, and my parents both had lots of different Golf GTIs, and my first race car was a 205. But then I don't know, because I tend to think more about race cars as well. And so if I think about my favorite era of race car design, it's probably the 60s, because I think of all those old beautiful prototypes like Ferrari P3s, Porsche 917s, the 908s, the Matra 650s. I mean, the engine in the Matra, that V12, is just one of the most bonkers sounding engines ever. So I think I'm gonna be different and say the 60s. I don't know much about road cars in the 60s, if I'm honest, but yeah, race cars of that era, just like complete death traps. But like,
yeah,
with feet in front of the front axle and then some fiberglass.
Naomi and Tom, you're right. Is there a split opinion between Naomi and Tom, or are we going as a collective? There is a split opinion. Of course there is. There usually is.
So I'm going for 1920s. I totally understand the 80s box square love, and that's obviously coming back in like new things like the new Honda Urban EV. But for me, 20s is beautiful. It's like that Art Deco styling, the modernism coming together in car form. So you get every beautiful flowing shape. Running boards on the sides, so there's that like slightly iconic image of like the mobster kind of hanging on as well, but they are utterly beautiful. There's like the original Silver Shadow, there's the Bugatti, just double checking given the audience we are, yeah, Bugatti Type 35B, there's the Auto Union Type C, the like amazing sort of bullet shape. There's like such wild variation, and it feels to me like that Wild West era of car design where people have worked out how to make it, but now they're working out how to market it and how to design something really intricate. So it's huge variation, and yeah, that's it for me.
Yeah, and I guess in those days it was like if you had a car, it wasn't just because you had to get to work or you had to do the shopping. If you had a car, it's because you had the money to buy a car and you wanted something that made a statement. Obviously, mass production came along and kind of made the car a different thing. But I guess in the 20s, it was all about showing off and that kind of art of cars. So yeah, a fantastic kind of extra angle to throw out there when everyone's been talking about Audi Quattros, and then you come along and just say, "No, gangsters in Bugattis." Naomi.
I was going to say the late 60s into the 70s because that's when the Triumph TR6 was built, and that's the car that I want above all others. But I recently found out I don't fit in one at all. So I'm not going to say that. I'm going to be a bit boring. I think I'm quite excited about the next decade in the 2020s because all of the things that we've been talking about, aside possibly from all of the sort of analog properties, but a lot of the boxiness and squareness of design is sort of coming back around. Yeah. So even as Tom mentioned, the Honda, the EV concept rather than the E, and even the Polestar and things like that. Maybe it's an EV thing that's driving it, but I feel like we might get another shot at that, even if it's in a slightly more sanitized way. So I'm going to go with that.
I really hope so, because I don't know about anyone else, but I think a lot of cars are looking a bit like the same these days. And, back sort of in the 80s, 90s, if a car came past you, including an exclusive car like a Porsche or a Jaguar, you just automatically know what it was. But some of the high-end cars at the minute that pass you, you really have to sort of have a look at it to see exactly what it is. And I just think a lot are looking too samey at the minute. So I'd really welcome that, Naomi, for sure.
Yeah, I think the car manufacturers have realised that getting a bit of making it a bit different, getting a bit of retro in there as well. We saw obviously Volkswagen tried with the Beetle, but then it really took off when the Mini and the Fiat 500 came along, and people just like, oh, I want that style in a new car rather than these, these cars that all just get churned out looking the same. I don't know if you guys have seen that graphic where there's like the side of all the SUVs that car manufacturers produce, and they're all white.
But sorry, I'm going to do. Sorry, I have to chip in.
Thank you. I was just about to
interrupt as usual. In that people say that about every era when they're in that era. If you look at cars from the 50s, they're all the ruddy same. If you look at most cars from the 60s, they're the same. We only remember the outliers, and this happens right the way through automotive history. So I always think that's a bit unfair. I'm sorry. I'll button it again now.
No, that's right. I think Lewis is probably of the same opinion. Lewis, have you got a particular era that you like or dislike, or would you like to just back up what Alan was saying?
Well, I would definitely agree with what Alan says, because there are companies and tranches of automotive design that you could snapshot through the eras, and you could put 20 cars from one era in profile on a poster and no one would be able to tell any of them apart. So you do get a lot of that going around. In terms of my favorite ones, I'm going to side with Charlie and Jonty, in that 60s tends to be something I sort of gravitate towards. I mean, I've owned a lot of 60s American and British cars, so they always sort of naturally catch my eye. Just, everything from that Coke bottle, stereotypical American styling, through to kind of the more elegant and refined kind of Michelotti Triumph era. But I will say there are some, I'm not really a fan of pre-war cars in general. Anything sort of pre-1950s, maybe even 1960s to some extent, generally sort of leaves me a bit cold. But there are certain little sort of niches, like in the 30s when you've got cars like the Tatra T77, that were just so mind-bendingly out there, both in terms of design and materials and construction methods, that you just can't help sort of admire them. And on reflection, something that others have alluded to, you look at some of the cars from that era and they look to be from an entirely different time altogether. So there are always those sort of odd exceptions.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, there's like of every era, it's like Alan said, it's the outliers. I mean, if the Cybertruck comes along, is that going to be what people kind of think? Oh yeah, remember the Cybertruck, and that didn't look like anything else that's out there. But Richard, what about you?
Well, the 80s ran it close. I mean, Tom and I have been talking this week about the RS200, the Ford, and I'm a fan of Demetris XR4, all those kind of cars. But I think it would be being born in the 70s, the 1970s, because you had stuff like the first generation of vertical Volkswagens. You had the Audi 80, the brave new world of Porsche, like the 924, 928, 914, BMW 2002 Turbo, Star 99 Turbo, Renault 5, and Renault 5 Turbo too, which is one of my favourites. Although that did straddle the 80s too, technically.
Yeah, fair enough. So sort of half a vote for the 80s again. And I suppose, I think the last guy on my list, Craig, if I've not missed anyone else out there. Craig, now obviously you've been lucky enough to sort through rolls and rolls and glass plates and everything of cars, mainly motorsport, over a century really. So you must be well versed in the different eras of car design.
Yeah, more than a century actually, because we're going back to like the late 19th century with the stuff that we've been going through. So I've seen a lot of pictures of different cars, and I was thinking, right, what era do I go to? And I think I can't think of bad cars. And my taste is very motorsport centric as it is, and I was thinking the early 1970s is the winner for me. There's a few reasons for that. I think to the rise of Can-Am in the United States, which are probably the most wonderful looking race cars on the planet, I think, ever. There's so much innovation in Formula One as well, with things like the Lotus 72 and so forth. And I think in like sports cars as well, you think about the Porsche 917, which just went on and on and on and on and on forever. So you got you got cars that really defined the generations to come, based off of that based off of that era. I think that's what swings it for me. They just look really, really nice. You got very iconic liveries as well. Some properly out there stuff as well. And for me, it's just the one that I think, yeah, every car that I come across, I think that's really nice. You've got so many like wonderful concept designs as well, and it's just something that I just really, really take to whenever I look for pictures. I'm like, right, 70s, there's some nice stuff in there. And
yeah,
one of my favorite things to look for oversteer shots, and things of like Ronnie Peterson sideways in a JPS Lotus from the early 70s, and into the late 70s as well. That sort of stuff that I'm just like,
yeah,
that's where it's at.
Cool. Oh, it's nice to see that we've had a nice big selection of different decades there. It was looking quite 80s at one point, but I think there's been a nice spread. Before we get on to what I think hopefully is a bit of carbon fibre from Tom, if he has brought that along today. Have you brought that along? You have. I'll just ask Alex, because obviously we welcomed you along, had a quick chat, and then we've kind of been talking about different eras of car design. But you've, I think the reason why I was quite excited to have you along here, you've been commentating on races again, haven't you, after being in karts for a while?
Yeah, I mean, like Charlie, I've made the transition from circuit and track side to the esports world, and think it's been about 6 weeks before. Well, I'd actually been approached back in late March by Rotax to be one of the commentator, the voice for their Rotax Sim Racing Challenge, which we had on this past Sunday. And then after that, things started developing. Darren S. Cook, a good friend of mine, and Charlie's from Scruffy Bear Pictures, and a few others here as well, said, we really need you. We want you for the Team Brit E-Series, Summer Series. And I did my first broadcast, Suzuka, last week. And I can see where Charlie's coming from, because it's not just the drivers, it's us, us commentators that are trackside. And you're in a commentary booth, you've got timing. If it's a live broadcast, you've normally got about a plethora of monitors in front of you. And it feels really weird, because I'm having to, we've sort of like had to come up with a makeshift soundproof sort of system here in the house. So the blind in front of me, when I'm normally broadcasting, goes down. I've got this behind, so at least no noise travels backwards. I've got a rug underneath my feet. And there's plans to hopefully get a couple of doors put on the office when we can finally get that done. So things are sort of progressing in a direction that I firstly didn't really anticipate, Damien.
Yeah.
But the learning of I was absolutely scared witless. Friday afternoon, 3 o'clock, we went live on Twitch, Facebook, YouTube, on multiple different platforms, and I thought, practice isn't going to be the test here, Alex. It's quali. We got to quali for the first 10 minutes because I didn't really have my bearings. It was, it's like being in an office. Okay, I'm in my booth. No, I'm not. I'm in my house. What am I doing here? So I can get the correlation and how so many people. I mean, obviously, there's people that have done sim racing commentary. Jack Nichols, for instance, he started in the sim as a sim commentator. He's then gone to British GT, now obviously Formula E, and now doing a great job with Marbula E with Greg Woods on Jelly Marbles runs, which is brilliant, done through Envision, which is absolutely brilliant. It's really, really good to see all these worlds sort of collide and just to have a different opportunity. It's a different skill set. And I've already started prepping for this coming Friday at 3 o'clock. We're going to Monza. We had 27 cars. They've opened the servers up to 50 this coming Friday. We're running on Assetto Corsa Competizione with the DLC pack. And we're using Discord, vMix. We're using a multitude of technologies. And now the next investment isn't going to be potentially changing my car, potentially looking into getting some other bits and pieces. It's a PC because I work on a MacBook. So, but we've managed to get around those sort of compatibility issues with a myriad of different technologies, and just how connected we are these days has just really just shown how different the world has become, because esports is filling the void of every one of us that normally will be, like say Charlie being in the M240i Cup with the team at the Nordschleife in VLN and doing the Nürburgring ADAC 24 hours, has completely sort of stopped, and we've had to adjust. And it's not been easy. I thought at one point I wasn't going to be commentating for quite a time, but then people started getting in touch, and then it's changed, and it's made my life a little bit more enjoyable in these difficult times, Damien.
Yeah, I bet it has. I mean, I think the world was just about ready. The world of technology was just about ready for something like this to happen. And a few years ago, I don't think it probably, people would have tried to do it, and it perhaps would have been a bit more of a nightmare. But I think it's remarkable how smoothly it's all going. When we see, when Charlie's racing, we see these professionals, the guys in Formula E, and basically all of the drivers are there. And now that they've all got the sims ready, and they're all kind of able to race because the technology is there for them to be able to do it, the internet's reliable enough. It's just about the right time for it to happen. And I think it's accelerated things forward so quickly that it's without the lockdown, we probably wouldn't be in this position. We'd probably be taking another 3, 4, 5 years before we could have this kind of welcome of esports that's happened recently. So it's a real turning of the tide in motorsport, and maybe some other sports, although they don't really have the same kind of parallel between esports and the real thing that motorsport can get.
It is, Damien, you're right. I just did a preview on the Formula 2 race yesterday. It was like the sort of the first official inaugural Formula 2 race, and my last article was, you know, about a preview to that, and obviously and it wasn't just about the Formula 2 drivers that were in that yesterday. It was, you know, including the other people that are getting involved. You know, even like Ian Poulter and you know, even like the football players that are getting involved. But even today, there's been a fantastically hilarious race this afternoon. Lando Norris again, you know, is sort of at the head of it, with Carlos Sainz is in there, and also Zach, you know, the big guy, the big boss, is in there, and it was so funny that you had to watch it. You really did. They were all sort of crashing and spinning and in the air and waiting for each other so they could then keep, you know, no one was off winning. And Ian Poulter's in there again, you know, this guy that usually plays professional golf. And I think we're all getting an insight into the personalities that we never get to see any other time, because, you know, media is so structured, and, you know, interviews and comments are so carefully watched over. And when the guys are sitting there at home in their sims, you know, there's nothing to stop them saying what they want, and probably a big PR nightmare for some of the media teams. They're probably sitting there going, no. I think it's great watching.
I think one of the best examples of how someone has decided to, as usual, in customary showman fashion for those WTCR fans out there, Tom Coronel. Guess he's employed as his sim racing coach? Rudy Van Buren, who won World's Fastest Gamer a couple of years ago. And it's quite funny that Rudy was about to do Porsche Super Cup this year. And Tom has tried to do this like boxing ring announcer, like, and here's the sim racing champion Rudy Van Buren, like that, and like Rudy's like rolling his eyes in the back of his head whilst he's behind the wheel, and then he starts taking the mickey out of Tom, and they're very good friends as well. So Tom had the full get up, you know, triple screens, state of the art Audi Sports sort of steering wheel with the dash display up in front. And then he had a full roll cage in bright yellow, like his race suit. And he's got a smoke machine. He's got multiple cameras. He's streaming on YouTube, Twitch, his own Facebook profile. I mean, it's just, I think for some people like Tom Coronel, who goes the absolute mile, and I will be completely honest, we all know that there is something he does on Twitter, which is randomly follow and unfollow. On specific occasions, he's done that to me multiple times, but at least his brother Tim is actually a bit more discerning and actually stays following you, rather than Tom going, yeah, no, don't want to see that, no, unfollow. You know, I just hate to think how many times he presses the unfollow button a day and then refollows 3 days later or something like that.
Why don't you just press mute? It's so easy.
I just blocked him. I got when the engine goes.
That's the thing. So like, Tom Coronel, and then the next word that comes in the thread on Twitter is blocked. You know, it's a normal situation. But yeah, I think from my perspective, I think with a lot of the professional organisations that have really hit it, well, IMSA obviously having Bruce Jones, Sean Hindor, and Ben Constantinos. Ben's doing TCR Europe, which is doing their broadcast, I think, on a Wednesday night. But there's so much of it happening these days that it's as you said, Damien, it is that time, because I was looking maybe say 2-3 years possibly to look to maybe expand into esports, but just sort of take it a step at a time. I'd done my first 2 events over in Europe. So I'd been to Spain, I'd been to Belgium. And literally before, well, I think it was like a couple of weeks before, I was due to do first 2 weeks of April, penultimate weekend of March was due to go to PFI, the home of British karting, for the first round of Motorsport UK. Then April was going to be one of my busiest months. 2 trips to Belgium, 1 to Germany, and then also to do my first commentary gig in German. Wow. Yeah, it was like the first week of lockdown for me personally, I must admit. Mental health issues came back, and anxiety, insomnia, couldn't sleep. And it felt like, I'm going to use a video game reference here. It was like someone had run me over in the old police chase game, Chase HQ. You know, like I was flattened to the side or something like that. So it was like all that hard work over 2-3 seasons of getting myself established. And behind the scenes, like I'm being communicated with from my friends in the Netherlands, in Germany, a lot of my friends over across continental Europe. You know, it's that they're all saying like, when are we going to go racing? You know, what do you honestly think? And I said, I don't know, is the honest answer. I mean, Motorsport UK has rescinded all permits, every single track. You can't even go testing like you can now in some tracks in continental Europe, especially like the Netherlands, Germany Austria have started doing that as of today. Right. So I don't know when we're going to go back racing, but if I'm honest, I am a complete 100% esports convert because of now I've been immersed on it from a commentary perspective. I've been watching it. And yeah, I think it's okay. It's not being the same as being at a racetrack, but it's pretty damn close with how realistic all these games are nowadays. You know, iRacing, Assetto Corsa, Project Cars, all of them are just at this really, really big level. And the realism, the dynamics of the cars, that how these companies have gone to a fine tooth comb to get the characteristics of these cars working absolutely as they should do in the real world. And it's credit to them that we're able to have this plethora of esports. And I think one of the championships that I'm really taking an interest at the moment is the DTM Esports Challenge, which is with Ollie from the German broadcaster the German broadcaster of DTM, and then Luke Crane, known as Actual Vision. This weekend they just had them racing at Zolder in the 1992 style season. So you have the Audi 100 Quattros, the BMW E30 M3s, absolutely brilliant. And they're actually going through the eras from the 90s right to, like, say, I think 2016. So there's so much adaptability with esports that you can't have in real life, and that's what really brings a refreshing dynamic to it.
Yeah, and I guess Jess might be able to answer this a bit better than me. I mean, some of the upcoming drivers and people who are looking around for sponsorship deals, it's probably a way to still kind of keep yourself noticed. I don't know, Jess, if you've seen a lot of people that are using esports to kind of scratch that itch at the moment, or keep their eye in and kind of trying to attract sponsors and that kind of thing.
Yeah, I think everyone's kind of had to pivot to this, but I think even before we all went on lockdown and sim racing and esports became what it was, I think lots of people were trying to do that anyway, because it's kind of a good entry level thing to show what you can do without having to have the budget to go racing in the real world. So I think a lot of drivers who are either without a drive for the season, because we don't know what's going on, or who have put their racing plans on hold, they've gone, right, what value can I provide to my sponsors in this kind of virtual world that we've got going on? And there are so many that are doing that really well and picking up sponsorship deals because of it. Yeah, I'm lucky enough to work with quite a few brands who do sponsor drivers up to Formula 2, and it's great to see that the logos on their Twitch channels and that kind of thing, they're doing what they can, and it's still really good to see them promoting it. Watching some of the Formula E stuff, actually, Charlie, I don't know if you saw any of it back, but whenever they got to James Collado, for example, he had all the Panasonic Jaguar stuff behind him, and he was doing what he could to kind of still fly the flag for it all.
Yeah, but definitely. I mean, I'm fully branded in NGK and stuff as well, you know, whenever I'm racing, because you just never know if they're going to suddenly cut to your camera or something like that. You just got to really use these opportunities to maximize exposure for your current sponsors. So it's a great platform to have right now to be able to to leverage that. And yeah, it's really cool.
Did you bring in any extra sponsors when you would kind of side with Adrenaline for the in Germany? Did you bring on any new guys, or has it just been your normal sponsors over the years?
Currently it's my normal sponsors. I mean, I got my my family business actually to sponsor me for the first time, which is really cool. So and I don't know, like there's some new people that I'm working on as well. So there's a lot of things, kind of conversations happening in the background and stuff like that. So it's in some ways suddenly having this pause, because inevitably when you're trying to get people signed up for the race season, there's people that drag their heels and you know, you're in that delicate position where you have to push people, but you don't want to push them away and push them too hard. And so, you know, it's actually given us a little bit more time to work on that and to hopefully, you know, get some new people on board as well. But yeah, you know, then fingers crossed we can go racing in June. So
absolutely, I think everyone here is going to be absolutely supporting you. Now I know we've kind of gone over what you would normally plan to do. So if any of you need to go, don't feel like you have to linger. But we'll just have a look for the time being at Tom's bit of carbon that he teased us with and not really told us much about. And let's have a bit of a look and a story behind this.
Guys, I've got to go, because I've got a call I've got to make. But thanks ever so much. It's really lovely to see you all, and look forward to seeing you next week.
Good luck, Charlie.
Bye, Charlie.
Thanks. Bye.
So yeah, I'll be really brief because I'm aware we've run over. This was referred to, I think, by Damien quite disparagingly as a bit of carbon. But actually, I think hopefully, it ties this call or just video chat together quite nicely, because it refers back to what Charlie said about the cars being built like they're made of iron. And I think Alan as well, talking about how Formula E kind of is different to most motorsports, that everyone's chipping in and kind of working together. So I was working with Dragon. This was the last London E-Prix that took place. And back then, some of the PRs, not the fancy ones, but some of the PRs packed down the garages with mechanics. So, you know, you've written your press release, it's all ready to go. And in the meantime, it needs to all be put in a box and put away. So did all of that, and then just took one last walk up and down the pit lane. I didn't get too many opportunities to go to races.
Can I just say we were polishing off the champagne at that point in the Emotion Club.
There's always one. Always one.
Came across this, which I asked the Venturi mechanic, would he mind if I took it? Would that be okay? I think you might be able to see here. It's still got the flap for the television camera, which is one of the many cameras that got wiped out in Formula E. It also has a severed point all the way down the nose because Sarrazin stuck it into the back of another car and they connected for about half a lap. So yeah, I asked the guy if I could have this, and the mechanic said, sure, that's absolutely fine. But it is connected to this. So if you want...
I'm waiting for a whole car to come out here, Tom.
We've got a tyre. Jonty's got the tyre.
So the final part of the story is that I've picked up an actual race-worn Formula E nose cone from the weekend where I was working, and worked with my future wife, which was kind of a cool story. I ended up walking down the pit lane towards her. She was chatting with someone from CNN, and I don't know, about 100 feet from the point where I picked it up to get to her. About halfway, I realized quite how heavy this is, that my arms were giving out, that we were going to take the train home. We've been awake for more than we'd slept in the last week, which was a massive mistake. And Naomi has threatened to throw it away, turn it into a rocking chair, and everything ever since. But
I think it'd make a really good rocking horse.
But there you go.
I had to rent a car so we could drive it back to Bristol because we couldn't take the train anymore.
We were going to rent one anyway.
That's true.
You can make it
But there you
make
go.
a sim out of it. Just have it as like a nose cone on the front of a sim and something like that, and just make it really cool. Tom's thought about this already.
He's had the we can see it in his eyes. He's got that ulterior motive, haven't you, Mr. Spencer? Come on, admit it.
Yes. Since working for Marine, not only did I put on quite a bit of weight, which is not great for a racing driver, but I'm also 6'3" and have size 14 feet. So getting in a Formula E car is not the easiest. I might slightly adapt it. It will look like one of those F1 cars that have the stupid step nose, I think. But yeah, we'll find something to do with it. But I thought I'd bring it along and show it off because it's something genuinely kind of cool and
it is cool,
different and interesting.
Well, actually, I'm going to add a little bit to this story because I was there. I was there at the Battersea E-Prix, and I still have, to this very day, the Formula E cars that were actually in the box.
Very nice.
So that has actually been sitting in my cupboard, along with multiple other things from motorsport memorabilia, classic cars of the 20s, the 40s, the 60s, because I used to collect model cars as a kid, being a complete and utter petrol head. But there's
It's
one
just
thing that I am really proud of, that I actually, my sister and my brother-in-law got married just over a year ago. We had 2 weddings, one in not too far outside of Ipswich where I live, the surrounding areas, but we all got a little wedding gift from the bride and groom. Now, everyone else got maybe a bottle of scotch, bottle of gin or something like that. I got this.
Ooh.
The MP44 of Ayrton Senna from 1988. And that is probably the highlight point of what I've got in my, I've got about 1.5 shelves filled with model and die-cast cars, some of which have been a bit, let's just say, battered around when I've moved house. And come off a bit worse, unfortunately. But
not as worse,
yeah.
not as bad as Ian's model car collection. That's come off quite poorly. Alan, you seem to be trying to get our attention there for a moment.
No, I wasn't. I was trying to find my one of those. From
there's another one.
So I can't. It's such. Well, you can only see the tidy bit of my office. So
yeah, I've got some behind me. I don't know if you can see. There are shelves of cars dotted about.
I've got all the goodies from the 2016 Emotion Club somewhere.
Well, I think now that we've kind of come well over an hour, we're probably better off saying goodbye for now and leaving some for next week. So, Alex, I think from all of us, I'd like to say thanks ever so much for popping along. And it's really good to know that you're back commentating again and enjoying esports and hopefully getting a lot of work out of it, a lot of fun out of it. And we're going to see more of you or hear more of you on TV soon.
Yeah, well, predominantly on YouTube and Twitch or Facebook, whichever platform that's used these days. But yeah, really good to see some people I haven't spoken to in a very, very long time. But yeah, thanks for having me on, Damien. Really appreciate the invite. So yeah, really looking forward to seeing the next episode next week.
Yes, fantastic. I'm not sure what the question is going to be yet. So if any of you guys have any ideas of what question you'd like to pose to everybody or a challenge for people, I think what we'll probably end up doing is having a longer Formula One quiz, and we sort of know what to expect. So if there are more F1 questions coming, or perhaps about other forms of motorsport or cars in general, Neil, then maybe you could bring them along to the next one. We'll see what happens. But if anyone has any ideas of what question we could pose to everybody, you know the drill. You can just drop me a direct message. We've got the group going there, and then we'll pose that during the week and set this all up again for the next one. And hope to see most of you back here, and Toby as well, who I believe is on a train or driving a train or has driven a train, and I'm sure he'll be gutted that he's missed out this week. And it'd be good to see him back. So till next time, everyone. I'd like to say goodbye and thank you all for coming again.
Bye.
Thank you. Take care, everyone.
Thank you. Bye.
Everyone.
Good week.
Bye.